Well, we've now extended this approach in assessing the preventable fraction to the whole of Guangdong province. And we've recently published a new report entitled A Price Too High, which, among other things, emphasizes the need for good data for health impact assessment and accountability, a wide spectrum of the data that we need for this purpose. Well, in our next move, we tried to operationalize this approach as a real-time reporting system. And by logging onto our environmental index, which you see here, you are effectively transported 6,000 miles away to Hong Kong, where it's about 25 to midnight. And we can see first the outputs from 13 general monitoring stations. Now, this is August, and it's the best time of the year, and they've had a very good day. Things look as though they might be beginning to deteriorate, but at the general stations, the air quality has been unusually good. However, at the roadside, a different picture, driven by emissions from traffic, from marine and port activities, and many other sources. Today has been dominated by particulate, that is PM10 levels, around about 75, peaking, and up to 150 nitrogen dioxide. On this site, any member of the public can identify any particular day of the year. For example, 1 year ago today, in 2008, we see a pretty similar picture, except that on that day there was a very high pulse of sulfur dioxide. The site will also tell you what was the worst day so far this year, and that turns out to be the 22nd of January, when you can see particulates and nitrogen dioxide were 200 to 250, and sulfur dioxide between 80 and 100 micrograms. Now, these hourly pollutant levels translate into attributable costs, which since midnight today are estimated conservatively at about 4 million Hong Kong dollars. You can press this button and get the same value in US. And it will also tell you the intangible costs based on public surveys of willingness to pay to avoid these bad health outcomes. And today that amounts to 27 million Hong Kong dollars. The site, these incidentally, these costs are attributable to today, 13,000 doctor visits, (134 hospital admissions, and 2 attributable deaths. The site will also provide you with any cumulative index in a historical series, which you can define by putting in the start and end dates for that period. There is an FAQ section, which will help people like me navigate the site, talk about the methodology of how the costs were calculated, also discuss, for example, the concept of the intangible costs and its possible relevance to an individual. It discusses, of course, the mechanisms of air pollution harm to health, and provides links to scientific papers and general reports. Links to news articles, to other sites such as CNN, featuring programs about Hong Kong's air pollution problems, and so on. Thank you, Owen. Well, I have to say that the government's not very pleased with this development. They're certainly not well disposed to this site and the way that it externalizes the harm from pollution and its running impact assessment and commentary. This may possibly have something to do with the fact that my colleagues insisted on naming it after me, but hopefully this will not detract too much from its central purpose and value. In the meantime, the government has continued to procrastinate and has stated publicly that the World Health Organization guidelines are, quote, too strict. It employed a consultancy to invent a new series of air quality objectives, which are mostly based on WHO interim targets, but critically modified with many additional permitted exceedances of these single limit values. And we can show by using Hong Kong data over many years and log normal probability distributions that the predictable outcome of these bowdlerized targets, which are apparently not health-based, will not only slow the progress towards better air quality beyond what is necessary, but will in fact cause a deterioration in some pollutants, principally sulfur dioxide. These new modified objectives are already being used to distort risk communication by the government. All of this is occurring in a very high pollution environment. On the right, you can see that the trend pollutant curves, in this case for RSP, are statistically flat. If they're going anywhere, it will be 2050 before they would even begin to approach WHO guidelines. And on the left, you can see that in the cool season, the trends are clearly increasing. Overall, the annual decrement based on these years at minus 2.3% would have to increase to 14% or more if we were to even approach the guidelines by 2015. We are now moving to institutionalize our index as the standard risk communication instrument on environmentally related state of public health in Hong Kong and project it for schools, where it might form the basis of exercises in a spiral curriculum, certainly the media, legislators, and possibly even one day government policymakers. But we are left to ponder about the risk, about the value of risk communication tools in different environments. While we acknowledge that risk communication needs to be scientifically valid and robust, and that it needs channels of dissemination which provide wide, sustainable coverage, it may not succeed. It may not influence policy against agendas which are purpose-designed to protect vested interests. And that's our present situation, that Hong Kong children's lung function continues to be traded off in favour of vested interests, as indicated in the hourly readings of those clocks in the index. Thank you.